Good afternoon, collectors and friends. Welcome to Trading Card Therapy, episode number 96. I'm your host, the Dr. Leighton Sheldon, and we have a fantastic episode in store for you today. But first, I'm going to show off one thing before we bring on our guest, Chris from Card Ladder. So I was recently bidding in an auction, and I didn't share this with Chris before. So we'll see if he catches a glimpse, and we'll certainly be talking about it in just a few minutes. So like Chris from Card Ladder, I'm also a Michael Jordan collector. Not just collect cards, but I collect memorabilia and tickets and photos. Was able to find an amazing photo that was up for auction. You know, when something's at auction, as Chris, our guest knows full well, you never know what's going to happen. And you have to try to go into the auction with a budget. And of course, often that budget is eclipsed because you have this emotion kind of running through you and this adrenaline. And so without further ado, I was able to win this photo. But what was interesting, and I'm going to share the full story when I post about it on IG, but this is the first time I'm revealing it. So gang, when I bid on this photo at SCP Auctions very recently, I recorded myself while I was placing the initial bid of, I think, 800 or $1,000. And just for fun, I took a shot. I'm like, I think it's going to sell for X. I really hope I get it. So without further ado, I'm going to show you the photo. It's the most expensive Michael Jordan photo that I've ever bought. And keep in mind, this isn't signed. It's not a rookie year photo. It just really resonated with me. And I'm going to let you, the audience, decide. When I saw it on the screen, of course, I loved it. But when I saw it in person for the first time, I'm getting goosebumps now describing to you. It looks like some sort of mythical god or mythical figure has come out of the trees. And his name, that's right, number 23, Michael Jordan. So without further ado, because I could talk about Michael Jordan for the entire episode, I'm going to bring on a good buddy of mine, Chris from Card Ladder. How are you today, Chris?
Doing well. Congratulations. That is a very cool pickup.
Thank you. I candidly was embarrassed, believe it or not, when the hammer fell because, unlike cards, Chris, right, there's an established base, of course, using Card Ladder, one of our favorite pricing tools. With photos and memorabilia, it's not quite like that.
Well, I don't know how much you want to dive into this, but I'm fascinated by this topic. I'm fascinated by the book that was published about 20 years ago that set out some of the ground rules for the categorization of photos into types and how the establishment of that structure allows the collector brain to be engaged and sort of what we can learn from how that structure was implemented in the arena of photos and how it was implemented in the arena of sports cards 100 years ago, a little more recently, but by the Jefferson Burdick and the whole cataloging era, and then the adoption of the checklist methodology, and then on came the Beckett publications and the price guides. But the way that structuring a collectible class logically into categories, the way that enables us to collect it and mentally process it and come to associate different things by how they relate to each other is honestly one of the key insights, I think, into the collector's brain.
I think you nailed it, Chris. I'd certainly love to start off the episode just with that because it's a fascinating topic. So, keep in mind, you and I have both bought something and then sold it for a profit. I'm almost certain that we've also bought something and sold it for a loss. Thanks for laughing. And so you can imagine, and I'll just share the price because you can look it up. I was going to start off by showing off the photo like this, meaning this is what I bought, just the lot number. And obviously you can look it up yourselves, but all in without shipping and insurance, it was $6,000 with the buyer's premium. And, candidly, even as I say it aloud, I'm a little uncomfortable / embarrassed because there's really not, an equivalent, if you will, right? It's not a rookie year photo. It's, you can say, hey, rookie year photos, type 1 of MJ typically sell for between X and Y. Chris, I can tell you, I bought this as a piece of art. Now, I do love MJ. I hope it's worth a lot more in the future, but really for my son, because I have no intention of selling it, and he's only 10. So I really did. I bought it as a piece of art that also doubles as a piece of sports memorabilia. And keep in mind, I did have the experience. I've been buying Keep in mind, I didn't say selling. I've only sold 2 photos in my whole life, not just Jordan. But I've been collecting photos for 20 years. So when I saw this photo and I placed that initial bid, I don't know if you caught my little diatribe to start. I took a video of myself placing that initial bid because I was like one of those, like, I'm going to win this photo. And I was willing to go up to $5,000 all in. And then, Chris, when it was moving that final night, 2,700, I was still feeling pretty good. But once it hit the threes plus the juice, I'm like, man, this thing's going to go all the way. I wonder if I can even win it. And so fast forward, thankfully, I've been in auctions before. So there is a little strategy, gang, right? It doesn't always work, the strategy, Chris, as you know. But I looked ahead and said, wow, I should actually place my max bid now, because what happened at 5,000, it then went to 5,500, which in turn would mean it would be 6,000 to me plus the juice. So that made the decision for me a little bit easier. If I lose it at 5,000 plus the juice, I'm out. I'm going to sleep. Maybe not well, but I will sleep, and I'll decide the next day, the next fight, the next photo I'll go after. And ultimately, I think there was at least 3 bidders involved. It did go up to that 5,000 plus the juice. And there she is, right? There's the photo. And I'm real excited about it. And it's cool, Chris, because I'm not excited about it, candidly, about the money I spent, but I feel like a little kid, meaning I have no intention of selling it, barring any unforeseen circumstances. And when I got it, it's one of those where I'm like, wow, it's actually better in person than it was on the screen. So what are some of your thoughts on that, Chris?
Oh, so many thoughts on this. Okay, so one of my other favorite topics is auction bidding strategy, and how you sort of sketched out that by getting in your max at 5K, that sort of gave you an advantage relative to other bidders. If somebody had beat you to that maximum bid, then you would have had to top them and get to 5,500. You probably weren't going to do that, but since you got your 5K bid in first, they had to top yours. You end up coming away the winner. I mean, little things like that then have grand consequences of you having this amazing mail day. You've been able to share this piece of memorabilia with your son. Yeah, it looking even better when it comes in person. Now we're talking about it on a podcast, the ripple effect of it all, the butterfly effect of it all, because you were a savvy bidder and you pursued it properly. I just think like little things like that literally impact the happiness factor in our daily lives. So I think that's awesome, man.
Thank you. Since we're talking about, and obviously I had a whole agenda, but I usually deviate quite regularly. Why don't you share maybe a story? Because I've heard a number of your podcasts and lives through the years, and I don't want to set you up and suggest something. So maybe if you could share something. I've heard you chase down a Luka card multiple states away. Obviously you have some other amazing cards in your collection, but it's not always the most valuable, Chris, that lends the best story or yields the best story. So I'm curious if you could share something with us that really resonated with you, both before you got it in hand and then when you got it, there was this aha moment. You're like, wow, I'm really proud of myself for getting this.
Yeah, I have a few of those. Also have a few where, overpaid grossly for something and then sold it for a loss too. That the more of those have happened recently. But the story that just came to mind first for me for this was I just like totally unprepared, just what jumped into my mind first when you said, hey, what's a cool story? And it's this one, and it's for one of my favorite cards. So that's probably why, but it's the story of how I got my Michael Jordan PMG Red. And the way that happened was, I came back to collecting cards in 2016. The PMG Red was just mythical, and I always wanted to get one. And but it was expensive, and I just never felt practical. But all of a sudden, I'd been collecting for a few years. I had acquired this shoebox of Michael Jordan inserts, and all of a sudden, I have some equity in my collection, as I like to say. Suddenly, I have these trade pieces that I could consolidate into a bigger card. Well, Michael Jordan PMG Red comes available on eBay. I get really excited. I start messaging him. We're going back and forth. There's somebody else who wants it. I want it. And I just say, you know what, screw it. I'm going all in. I'm going to go all in for this card. And I'm going to sell all the cards that I have, or as many as I need to be able to fund this card. So let's set this up. Let's set up the meet. Let's set up this deal, and let's do it. And so the person who's selling me the card happens to be a professional poker player in Las Vegas, and I'm in Southern California at the time. So we set up a meet, and he says, I'd like you to meet me in the San Diego area. I'm going to buy a car, and I'm going to use the money from selling this Michael Jordan card to you to buy a brand new car, like a vehicle that I can use to start driving for Uber to supplement my gambling income. So I meet this guy at a car dealership. I have an envelope of the cash, and as I walk into the dealership, I say, I'm looking for him. I texted him. He didn't reply back right away. I asked somebody who's working at the counter. I said, is this individual here? And they're like, oh yeah, he's out test driving a car. He'll be right back. He said you were coming. He comes in, shows me the card. I say, this is a dream come true. We make the deal. He leaves. He flew in, but he drove home to Vegas in his brand new car. I leave with the card. I'll never forget the story. I'll never forget it. Took the card down to PSA the next day, got it graded. And it was just, God, that was one of the best stories. One of my best experiences.
I appreciate you sharing that with us, Chris. I have a couple questions about it. So number one, because I have people asking me this all the time on the vintage side, ungraded. How are you so comfortable to buy such an expensive card ungraded?
Okay, so I knew that in this particular instance, I knew the card had been previously graded by Beckett, and that the card previously, because PMG Reds with Jordan, there are 90 of them, they're serial numbered. I was able to trace the serial number. It had actually publicly sold before. It was serial number 16 of 100. So I was able to see that it had previously sold before. Funnily enough, it was graded in a Beckett holder, but they slabbed it backwards. So it was just an error in the slabbing process, which happens. It happens once in a while. So it was removed by the current owner, who just liked it nicer in the one touch. He just felt like it looked nicer, and plus the slab had been slabbed backwards, and so I was able to look at sales history results to see scans of this card to make sure that the serial numbers matched, make sure there was no funny business here. Also, this particular individual checked out. He had a good hobby resume. He had been buying and selling cards for a long time. He implemented a contract as well with this individual. Don't always do that, but in this case, we had a simple one-page agreement. So I feel like I covered my bases on a lot of levels. Still, it's never a risk-free experience. I think I always go in with my eyes wide open, understanding that something might go wrong, and that I have to be prepared for that eventuality, that it could happen. But try to cover all my bases and do as much research in the provenance of the card and to the credibility of the seller as possible. And then also, it was certainly strategic and by design that as soon as I buy this card, I'm going right to PSA's Santa Ana office. As soon as I get it, I'm grading it to make sure, most importantly, that it's authentic, also to get a numerical grade. But I mean, PSA and BGS have pretty different standards on 90s cards, it seems like sometimes. So, it was graded a BGS 8 before it was cracked out. And then once I graded it, got a PSA 5, which was a bummer at the time, but now it's okay. It certainly isn't as much of a factor anymore. But all those things, Leighton, having the mentality to know that I am taking a risk and just doing as much due diligence as possible on the card itself, on its provenance, and on the seller.
You did a great job. I'm super happy for you because I know that the card found a really good home. I'm curious, when you bought it, did you feel similar to me in the way that I did acquiring this Jordan photo? Meaning you were ponying up, most certainly. You're liquidating a lot of assets to get it. Did you buy that card thinking, wow, I might leave the earth with this card in my possession? Did that go through your head at all?
Yes, that is always sort of in my heart when I'm really fired up about adding something to my collection. That's always at the core of my motivation, is like this act of acquiring this card and what it will mean when I add it to my collection and how it redefines my collection. It's a part of my identity. That sounds like highfalutin and grandiose, and I don't mean it to be. It's not. It's modest, but it's very. It's just a strange thing to say, but that action is part of who I am. It's defining my value system. It's an act of expression. It's an act of creativity. It's an act of collecting, which, collectors, I think, I don't even think I need to explain that to a collector, but to a non-collector, I could explain it for hours and they wouldn't get it. So I just think some of us get it and some of us don't. But that's always at the heart of it, is this card is now a part of my identity. It defines me as a Michael Jordan collector. It defines me as a 90s collector. It defines me as a content creator. It's just something about it is now interweaving with my persona as somebody in the hobby. So this was in 2018. This was in the fall of 2018. I still have it, which, is still one of my absolute favorite cards. But also we know that sometimes we get really fired up about a card like that, and we think it's never going to leave ever, and then it does, and then something changes, a sentiment changes, an even more meaningful card comes up, our collecting taste shift, and all of a sudden then it does go. But at the moment, in the moment, and even still to this day, yeah, just like you with the Jordan photo, it's the same. It's like this item is really special and meaningful, and I just, it would take so much for me to part with this. I don't think it would ever happen.
Well, I appreciate you sharing such a wonderful experience that you had, Chris, on an amazing addition to your collection. I'm going to kind of go in an opposite direction once again, not even going to my agenda yet, which is pretty extensive. So I'll try to be diligent here. What kind of advice can we give to collectors out there that may not have the means that you and I had to acquire these items? Of course, I have my own thoughts on it, but I want to ask you, what kind of advice can we offer? What kind of roadmap with the national coming up can we help folks who've either just come back to the space like you did and re-entered, or maybe they're entering the space for the first time because our friend Gary V came out with such a cool set in the last few days, and all of a sudden, your family is now collecting V friends, and now you're going to go to the national and you're like, wait a minute, I remember this Jordan 86 Fleer. Wait, what's the star card? Right? All these different questions. So how do we help folks who are either re-entering or just beginning not become so overwhelmed, especially on the dollars and cents of it? Because, Chris, let's be candid, right? That PMG many years ago was much cheaper. This Jordan photo, I'm sure, wouldn't have cost $6,000 5 or 10 years ago. So how do we help those folks that I'm talking about?
Oh, this is such a good topic. So I want to just start by talking about mindset and what my mindset always was, because especially in Michael Jordan collecting, there are always fish that are much, much bigger, that have been doing it for much, much longer, and that have much, much better collections. And for me, one of those fish is my boss at Collectors Universe, which is Nat Turner. And his Michael Jordan collecting predated my return to the hobby. He authored some of the inspirational posts that I would see on the blowout forums that sort of helped me figure out what cards I want to chase. And it was always obvious, painfully obvious, that I would never even be able to come close to matching what he had assembled as a Michael Jordan collector. I was at too much of a time disadvantage. I'm at too much of a resource disadvantage. It will just never happen. I will never even get close. But is that discouraging? It's a little bit like, oh, poor me, I can't be the best at something. Who cares? I'm doing this for fun and for recreation, and because I have unique ways to express myself that only I can do. And that sort of makes me a one of one in the same sense as every collector could be. But also, and this is my zag, this is like where I'm going to give something a little bit different of an opinion. I take comfort in knowing that I'm not the biggest fish in a particular pond. I take comfort in knowing that there are people who have leveraged far more resources, who have shown equal, if not more, conviction, and who are curating and controlling far superior collections to mine. And then I sort of fit into this group somewhere in the middle, that I'm just a modest but very passionate member of this particular fraternity. And there's something actually comforting about that, especially when you're first joining into the sports collecting category and you're like, this is a little weird. Do people really spend this much money on this stuff? How sustainable is this? There's a real comfort in sort of just becoming that Jenga piece that just fits right into the middle. I'm just right there. And that's how I always felt about Michael Jordan collecting. Of course, like now, especially, I look at so Nat has what I think are 3 of the absolute best Michael Jordan cards. It's the 1997-98 Flair Showcase Masterpiece, one of ones. There are 4 of them. He has 3 of them. And sometimes I jokingly will message him and be like, I'm going to find that 4th one before you get to it, and he's like, forget it. No, you're not, but those are I'll never get those cards. I aspire to. Michael Jordan only has 6 playing days, one of ones. Those are 4 of them. He has 3 of them. I'll never get to that. But I do take a comfort in knowing that there is this collector in the Michael Jordan world who is sitting at the very top of it. And he has curated this incredible collection. He has these cards. And that wherever I fit into the Michael Jordan collecting world, I fit comfortably in there. Now, with that said, I have ventured into other areas that are much less popular, that are not nearly as expensive. Michael Jordan is just a real one-off, I think, in sports card collecting. There's very few who are as collected and desired as he is. But with some other players I've started collecting, I've been able to acquire some of their very best cards. So I'll never be a big fish in the Michael Jordan pond. I'll be a moderate fish at best. But in the Christian McCaffrey collecting pond, I've got, I think, his 2 unequivocal best cards. And that's pretty cool too. I sort of learned from like how Nat and other people approach the Michael Jordan collecting. And I imported that into a more modest player to collect that I still love to collect. And now I've been able to curate that experience for myself too. So it's all a mindset thing to me. It's all about, finding where you fit in, where you're comfortable, and understanding that you can redesign the game. If I want to be the big fish in a pond, I'll just downgrade the player. I'll go collect Christian McCaffrey rather than Michael Jordan. And if I'm really passionate about Michael Jordan, I just have to accept this is my lane. This is where I fit in. I'll do the best I can. I'll be as creative and entrepreneurial as I can. But at the end of the day, that's where I fit. I take comfort in the fact that there are people who have outpaced me.
Chris, I tell you, I was getting goosebumps there because really not just as a collector and an entrepreneur in the space, but as a father, myself, I'm going to bring up an example about my son. It's really hard sometimes. Like, hey, why should we practice for baseball? I'm not the best player on the team, right? But there's lots of reasons why. And you bring up a great point. Like, I know, even if it was subconscious, I'm not going to have the best Michael Jordan collection. Yeah, I mean, forget about Nat. There's people that have, like David from High Speed Card Chase. He's got how many star, 84 101s? And yet, I think that's the key to life. Is how do we figure out how to be content in our own lane? How do we create, as you were talking about, our identity with the resources that we have? And it doesn't mean that we can't look at someone above us like a mentor and learn from them. And in particular with the Michael Jordan photo, I think I felt similar to you about your red PMG. Like, I know I love the photo. I don't really care necessarily if anyone else does. About the money, of course, I don't know. We'll see what happens, in about 50 or 100 years when my son decides maybe what to do with it. But there was a lot of satisfaction that I took. I'm like, I've taken the knowledge from the card space and that savvy, it's not that easy to bid in auctions and have strategy. And I decided to utilize that for myself. And believe it or not, even though I couldn't price that, I actually think I got a deal, because if you thought that it was the best Michael Jordan piece of art, there's no way you're buying the best piece of Michael Jordan art for $6,000. It's just not happening. And there's going to come a day where a Michael Jordan unsigned photo, I actually think in the same SEP sale, they had a Jordan unsigned photo from his rookie year sell for like a silly number. And it's a great photo. But I'm a true collector and I love MJ. If that photo wasn't from his rookie year, that photo doesn't cost $27,000. But the photo that I bought, doesn't matter what year it's from. It's tremendous and it's a piece of art. And so it really is all about mindset. And I did want to share, just because I didn't know the direction we're going, I want to share a really cute story about my son, Crosby, which I'll often do on here. But, I've told him that he can go back one day, right, and listen to these, and he'll certainly hear me talk about him. So 2 games ago, he has just a terrible game in Little League. So much so that he's really frustrated and he strikes out several times. He's really upset. So last Saturday, we go out and like we're out, I hear the chickens roosting. You know what I mean? Like, we're out early. I was proud of us. So we're throwing, and at first he's like real crotchety. Like, what are we doing? Why is it so early? Like, why do we have to be out here? And I just kind of like kept my smile on, made, a good time of it. And then eventually we got to hitting, and fast forward to the game. So Crosby's up, and I'm the first base coach. I'm an assistant coach in his team. And I'll be honest, man, I'm very nervous. But I'm trying to just keep my head down, right? And pretend he's just any other batter. I think he has 2 strikes on him. And I forgot exactly how many runners were on, but there was definitely a runner on third, and we really needed a hit. Now, it wasn't pretty, and he's a lefty, but he somehow banged out a single between first and second base. And I'll tell you, man, I almost, between picking him up and throwing him in the air and then crying, I was so happy. And what was better than that, he goes, Daddy, look, it worked. We practiced and it worked. And I'm like, we nailed it. He saw what's possible with hard work and diligence. And I really think the same could be said for collecting, right? Because you're right, Chris. You and I, we might have a nice collection. People might know us and we produce cool content. Let's be honest. We're not going to have a collection that's going to be better than Nat, Marshall Fogel, Ken Kendrick. I could just keep going with the list, right? But that doesn't mean we should feel worse about ourselves. And what was happening for my son is he was seeing these other kids smashed the ball. And he was like, well, I'm not as good as them. You don't have to be. There's 9 players on the team. There's 9 different positions. There's 9 different players that are going to bat in the order. And he really had such a wonderful lesson from that. And I think from that little lesson, and then from what we're talking about in the first give or take 20 minutes of the show, you don't have to be overwhelmed if we're present in our own respective lives. And I think that's really cool that we started off the show today like this, Chris.
That's a fantastic story. It's a fantastic metaphor for collecting. And the thing that like really ties it together is that collecting is sort of in some sense about returning us to a simpler time in our own lives as well, about simplifying or escaping the stresses of the day-to-day life of obligations professionally and familial, and just doing something that returns us to a simpler, happier time. And then all the lessons that come from that time, and how sort of we get to almost be Crosby when we're collecting, especially like if I'm going to my first national, and I'm up early the first morning, like just reading an old Beckett magazine or something, just trying to get my head in the game, just trying to get my head in the game and just make a play that contributes, do something that shows that I'm here, I can contribute. And you never know where it goes from there either. You never really know where you're going to end up.
We could spend the rest of the show on this topic, but I'll cinch it up with this, last little anecdote. You're right, Chris. When I started producing content, I remember thinking of myself as like, hey, I don't have any impact on the world. All I do is just really buy and sell cards. There's nothing to it. And I realized that you have a substantial impact on the people that cross your path. And then at about episode 75, and I know you have respect for the content game, you've been doing your own thing for quite some time. And you have to really love it, Chris, to be doing it for a long time like that, right? Because let's be honest, you and I like buying and selling probably more. It's just more fun. But I recognize this, and this, of course, is, a little bit of an ode to my son, to the hard work and having an impact on others and like the legacy you leave behind. At episode 75, it took me some time to kind of arrive at this. But when we were getting up there, Chris, I really want to do something special that, maybe in 5 years from now, even if I stopped at episode 100 with Trading Card Therapy, we go back and look and say, wow, there's some really good episodes there. So I decided to get 25 guests in a row. So believe it or not, you're the 21st guest that we've had since episode 75. And the cross-section of folks that I've spoken with, that my relationships are now better with, honestly, all of those other 20 or 21 people. I believe we provided an incredible amount of value. If nothing else, a different perspective and context, and provided some wonderful discussions about a hobby that we all love.
Well, I've listened to a lot of them. The one that I took the most insights away from was the Brady Hill. And so I have a Twitter account, and it's not super followed or anything. I have a few connections on Twitter. I know for some reason I don't get any traction on Twitter, but that's neither here nor there. But one of the things I like to do for my Twitter content only is when I'm listening to a podcast such as Trading Card Therapy with Brady Hill, I will clip out from the transcript in the Apple podcast player. I will clip out a little piece of the transcript that I found really moving. And there were several from that particular interview, just Brady sort of talking about, the advice that he gives to other people when they're starting to come into the industry, and sort of, how his personal preferences and tastes have shifted over time. And he's, at one instant he's pursuing these 90s cards, and this other instant he's pursuing this vintage, and sort of how dealers had taken him under their wing, and sort of he learned from them, and like just seeing how modest and humble he was, especially given the amazing collection that he's built. So many pieces of wisdom that I took away from it. And I was clipping and sharing several pieces of that transcript to my Twitter. Like, I guess that was maybe a month or two ago, or maybe a little bit more when that came out. But I'm honored to be in that list. I wish I would have been number 23. That was my only additional request. If I had just been number 23, but I'll take 21 too. It's an honor to be on that list.
That's so bad. Well, Chris, I appreciate it. If we can, I might try to take a step back now at the very least, because even though you and I have known each other for some time, I want to make sure that someone who might be tuning into this podcast or just listening to it on Apple or Spotify, wherever you enjoy your favorite podcast, that folks just get to know you a little bit better. So Chris, if you could, even though it's about 30 minutes in, if you could kind of reintroduce yourself and just give people a rough idea of, hey, where you come from, where you grew up, and then when did sports and collecting enter your life for the first time?
Yeah, I grew up in the greater Chicagoland area, and all my family's from that area too. I grew up a Chicago sports fan of all the different Chicago teams. That started my, connection to Michael Jordan. I also just became a fan as a kid. I was very much into sports. I was a fan of the Oakland Raiders. I was a fan of the Houston Rockets. Just really into sports. I collected cards throughout the '90s when I was a kid, but then I stopped and I shifted my interest, shifted into playing sports and also into music production. That ultimately was my first career in my first life, was working in the entertainment industry and music production. But after I'd done that for a while, I wanted to go back to school and pursue law. So I did. I had to start from the ground up. I just like somebody going to their first national. I started at community college, and then I went to a 4-year institution after I'd rebuilt my academic credentials. And then after that, I went to law school. But then it was while in law school that in Southern California that I started really getting involved in the card scene. I had rediscovered all my cards a few years prior to coming back to law school. And then I just, it sort of kept me grounded during law school, which is a very stressful time. And, I just started going to local card shops, going to trade nights. All of a sudden, like, I'm getting more and more into this. All of a sudden I have a podcast. All of a sudden, I'm just like swept away into cards, and it's almost like this dual life that's like competing with my law school interests. And it was just a fortuitous timing that just so happened that my partner, Christina, and my best friend Josh and my brother, the four of us who would come together to build the card ladder product, we were sort of developing it and working on the background. And then the pandemic happened, stay-at-home orders happened. And all of a sudden, I'm in my final semester of law school. All my classes go to pass fail. Josh is working from home. Christina's working from home. My brother's working from home. We just have this little extra time, this ability to sort of team up, come together and build a product, build all the social media, build all the marketing around it. It all just kind of came together in a few months. And so that was all of our foray into professionalizing in the industry. We launched Card Ladder in June of 2020. And then ever since then, we've been working in this space. We joined the Collectors Universe family in November of 2021. And, here we are on this podcast. The time has flown by. It's absolutely shocking to think about the fact that Card Ladder launched almost 5 years ago.
That's amazing. Congratulations to you and to the rest of your team, Christina and Josh. You guys have put out something tremendous that really impacts. What's really cool is every level of person in the hobby. It's an auction house owner, a collector, a dealer, an investor. And so for those that maybe aren't as familiar with Card Ladder, could you maybe touch upon some of the features that aren't as maybe prevalent or obvious to someone who's, for example, dare I say, has heard of VCP,
Sure.
Because they kind of came before you guys.
Yep.
And admittedly, I use both, but I'm here to say, and I don't want to, drop it too early, but I'll save it for in just a few minutes. I have some exciting news that I've worked on something with Card Ladder. I'll be revealing it for the first time on the show today.
Wow, that's awesome. Can't wait to hear that.
Yeah.
We have a tremendous amount of respect for VCP. VCP predates us by over a decade. And also other people who had enterprised into providing data, pricing, information. And, VCP, who I hope that I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth by saying they took the baton from Beckett and from the original price guide efforts that were made in print publications that, honestly structured the hobby both from a content sense and from a buying and selling sense in the 80s and the 90s. I mean, where would this industry be without the content of the Beckett Monthly magazine, which had circulation of 1 million for all the sports, the basketball? I mean, I remember that was the go-to gift from my aunt every year was a subscription to the Beckett basketball magazine. That was my birthday present every year from her. I loved it. I counted on it. That magazine was more than a price guide. It was content too. And pricing is content. Is sometimes it doesn't always make sense. It always sometimes seems different. Like, well, content is talking into a microphone and pricing is numbers on a screen, but pricing is content too. It's information. It can be entertainment. It can be turned into more content. And so we've always sort of had that perspective about pricing too, is that it's not just numbers on a screen. It's something we're excited about. It's something we really enjoy talking about. It's something that we enjoy making content about. It's energizing, especially like when we were first, starting to really pay close attention to the market and learning about, the marketplaces and assembling pricing information in spreadsheets and sort of thinking about how can we present this on a larger scale. The hobby was growing at that time too. So this Michael Jordan card that I had bought in 2016, and now I'm getting ready to sell it to buy a different one in 2018, and it doubled in value. And that was the case like across all these different cards in my box. And I was like, this is so exciting. Like this is growing. This is other people like this too. This is validation. We're all having fun. I see on the horizon even more fun. So, that was always sort of an impetus with Card Ladder, is just like, man, I'm having so much fun just keeping the spreadsheet of my collection. Wouldn't it be cool if everybody could do this too? Or at least we could give everybody a chance to do it. Our most used feature by far is our sales history page. It's a listing that has over 100 million sales going back to the early 2000s from all the various online marketplaces. But some of the underutilized features, one of the ones that I was using right before we came on, is a feature called Shop, which lets me, as the user, set some parameters. Do I want to look at only auctions? Do I want to look at fixed price? Do I want to look at both? What do I want to look at? Do I want to look at eBay? Do I want to look at Fanatics? Do I want to look at Golden? Do I want to look at Heritage, etc., My Slabs, and so on? I can look at one central listing of all the listings from these different marketplaces, and I can start filtering them. Now, really, I just use this just for entertainment. I just will go to there, I'll set it to auctions only, and I'll sort by highest price, and I'll just look and I'll see what are some really cool cards that I'll never own, but that are at auction right now that are really exciting. And like there's this Ken Griffey Jr. Essential Credentials that's at auction with Heritage right now. And I just go back to the shop page every few days and I just look and I see what's the bid? What's the bid at? What's the bid at? I'm really, it's entertaining. It's fun. It's like Jeremy has these auction watch party shows and hundreds of people tune in, and most of us aren't buying anything. We just want to see the action. We want to see the cards. We love the cards. We love every aspect of it. It's like there's a feature, Leighton, that maybe not a lot of people use or know about, but that I'm using all the time, is the shop feature.
No, I think that's a great feature. It's one I believe I've utilized before, but not recently. And I was kind of getting that notion when I was on your site earlier today. I'm like, I want to find out from you because, as you said, the sales price tool is the most obvious, but it seems like there's a lot of power residing in Card Ladder. And I wanted to make sure we flushed out something like this that maybe isn't as well known on the site, but can be a very powerful tool for any type of user that wants to look for cards.
Well, yeah, I mean, you would have to cut me off, and I won't go on, but like I'll just hint in one other direction of a feature that's very near and dear to my heart, is like the data science dimension of Card Ladder, is the player index modeling that we do, which combined with the fact that we have this 100 million sale database, we can now, if you're a user of Card Ladder, you can just go into your collection feature and you can price and maintain and update the price of any card, whether you want to do it through price modeling by using one of our indexes, which we have thousands of them. It's very easy to access that. Or if you just want to just wait and update the price as a new sale of your card and your grade comes in. Either way, we effectively can price any card for you, whether through modeling or whether through empirical observations as they come in. We can do that for millions of cards. Pretty much any card you own, go to the collection feature, put it in. We can keep the price and the value of that card updated real time for you.
That's really, really exciting. So, if I have a card and I'm unsure of the value, basically I could put it into Card Ladder, and at the very least, your existing database of 100 million or so entries, along with the different formulas, that all combined is going to give me some sort of at least educated guess as to what my card is worth.
Exactly. And that has been a long labor to get to that point. We started with 500 cards in our database, and with a totally different philosophy. Our philosophy when we started was, we're just going to very carefully curate the sales history of handpicked cards. And then we evolved, and very quickly we shifted philosophy entirely. And we said, we're not going to just like pick, a few thousand cards and just grow this database and just focus on these. No, we're going to open this up to everything. And we need to design systems that allow us to update the prices for everything, and sort of completely shift philosophy from being micro focused on just like certain cards and to a macro focus, but still being able to provide tools that allow pricing for stuff. Even if the last sale of this card was from 10 years ago, how can we update the price to at least give somebody an estimate? And then how do we make sure that we communicate that our confidence level is very low on this estimate? Like all these questions that we had to sort of solve and figure out over time. And now we've gotten to this point where you can just go to your collection feature. You literally, all you have to do is punch in the PSA cert or the BGS cert or the SGC cert or the CGC cert. Just punch the number in and just sit back. or you can be hands-on too. If you want to be hands-on, you can go in, you can adjust the index. You can say, well, my purchase price was $100, but I'd like to adjust that to reflect the fact that I also paid sales tax and that's not captured in the sale. I mean, you can just adjust and fine tune. And well, the player's Michael Jordan, but I don't feel like the Michael Jordan index is perfect. I'd like to create my own index that's only 80s Michael Jordan cards. And I want to model the price based on that. And I mean, we have power users who just have figured out ways to use the site that even we're like, how did you do that? We're seeing people do stuff that's fantastic.
That's really cool. For those that aren't familiar with this next point, I think it's important to discuss. And I wanted to ask, because I'm generally curious, and I'm sure other folks are as well. You talk about that the sales are vetted on your site. And I know a little bit about it, but I don't want to, put any words in your mouth. So if you could explain to everyone, because I think it's a extremely valuable thing that maybe isn't even talked about enough, that you guys are literally vetting these sales. So if you could share that with everyone, what's that process like for you?
Yes. And I don't want to oversell this because we make mistakes in this process every day. I know that better than anybody. So we have a research team of 4 people. It's myself, it's Christina, and then it's 2 very talented young men on our team who are named Joel and Kyle. And the 4 of us maintain an active database of about 70,000 unique cards for which we vet every sale, historical and future. So I don't want to get into too much of the architecture of how the software behind all this works. I'll just try to keep it high level and just paint the picture of how it works. So every day for those 70,000 cards, several thousand new sales come in. Sometimes it's 1,500, sometimes it's 4,000, depending upon if it's a Monday night or if it's a Sunday night. I'm responsible for some subset of those. Christina is, Joel and Kyle are, and we all, every single day, without fail, 365 days a year, we review every new sale of that card. This is the vetting process. So some of the things we look at, we will be cross-checking for accuracy, the number that we're able to generate. For example, if it's a best offer on eBay, we're going to cross-check that with eBay's Terapeak platform to make sure that our numbers line up. We do things like, making sure that the title that the seller titled their item properly matches the image of the item that's actually sold. We look at the bid history because once in a while you'll get a shilled auction where, it's $1,000 card. There's 10 other copies available on various marketplaces at $1,000 each in the same grade and the same condition. And here comes an auction for $10,000. We open up the bid history. We see that it was a battle between 2 zero feedback bidders. This is a sham sale. And we remove it, and we remove that sale. Now, we don't remove it entirely. You can still go see it. If you want to go see it, you can still see that this shilled auction happened. We're not trying to delete it from the history of the record, but we are not giving it our stamp that we verify the sale. And the verification or the vetting process is simple. It's just our estimate that it's likelier than not that this particular transaction is arm's length and will be consummated. It's our opinion on it. Sometimes we get it wrong. That's why I preface this with there have been times when we thought an auction was shilled, and then guess what? It shows up in Terapeak as paid. The buyer or the seller reaches out to us. We get some extra confirmation actually that was paid. Then we have to go back and we have to correct our error. Sometimes we think a sale was legitimate and it wasn't. And so we made a mistake in the opposite direction. Now we need to remove that sales verification badge that we put on it that appears in the sales history tool. Now we do it for 70,000 cards, but we have sales for millions of cards. So that's also a key difference here is that when that sales history, that takes over 100,000 sales every day coming to that sales history feature. We haven't looked at or verified the majority of those. We are only looking at and verifying and vetting sales for about 70,000 different cards, but it's a very important set of 70,000 cards. It's like all the different grades of the 86 Flair. It's all the different grades of the 84 Star. It's the 2003 Topps Chrome LeBron. It's the 1952 Topps Mantles, 1951 Bowman Mantles, all these different types of cards like this that we've chosen. And then the reason where our site has evolved to is that this whole database, the 70,000 card database, it is the core ingredients of all of our indexing. So we have thousands of indexes. We have indexes for all different types of players. We have all indexes for all different types of categories. That's why it's so important. Even though our main use case is people going to sales history, they just want to see all the sales period. But we still vet sales for all these players that then feed into our indexes so that the indexes have clean data so that we do not subject ourselves to the problem of garbage in, garbage out. We're only bringing in data that we feel are reliable transactions that are likelier than not to represent consummated arm's length transactions. From there, we build our indexes. Our indexes are what are used to perform our price modeling procedures. So That's the vetting. That's the vetting process that goes on. And when you're in the sales history tool, if you see a sale that somebody from our team has vetted and determined meets the criteria to receive the verification badge, it has a little green check mark. That's what that little green check mark means.
Really appreciate the extensive explanation. I have a somewhat difficult question now. You may not have the answer, but I know others have at least asked this of any pricing service that's out there. So there's a lot of transactions happening at card shows. There's a lot of private sales happening. Can you ever envision a day where those types of sales could be incorporated into Card Ladder?
This is such a good question. This is, I always have to, anytime we talk about, so one of the cool tabs we have is the industry tab on Card Ladder, which shows a snapshot of the monthly transaction volume of stuff that we track. And the last 2 months are the 2 highest months on history, by the way. The sales volume for sports cards right now is phenomenal. Even as our indexes show prices have been relatively decreasing on average, the volume just keeps going up. But anytime I talk about that, I have to preface it with the observation that this does not include any transactions that happened at a card show. This does not include any transactions that happen within a card shop. This does not include the overwhelming majority of transactions that happen across social media, where there's thousands of cards being sold on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram every day. We do have a mechanism in place to track those sales if the parties to those sales are willing to put in the effort to meet our criteria. We do have a private sales submission system. That the way that works, it's very rigorous. The vetting process that we perform for public sales, we have those same standards, and then we even exaggerate them, make them more extreme before we approve a private sale. So for somebody to have a private sale, whether it was a transaction that they consummated at a card show or something they did online, we have all sorts of things that we need to see before we will verify that private sale. We need to see proof of the transaction of funds. That can be, a screenshot of a wire transfer. That can be a screenshot of a PayPal transfer. We need to see proof of it. We need to have the permission of all parties that they consent to the sale being approved. All parties who are involved in the sale need to be members in good standing. They cannot be members of controversy or of questionable reputation. Not saying that means the sale didn't happen. It just means we're not going to put it in our database at this time. And everybody who is a party to the sale, who reports the sale to us, their name must be included in our reporting of the sale with a link to their social media, so that if anybody goes into our database and sees a private sale and says, well, I want to look into this further, I have further follow-up questions that I'd like to ask. Well, we directly link to the person who submitted that particular sale so they can ask follow-up questions. They can perform their own due diligence to look into the veracity of that sale themselves if they'd like to do that. So we have very stringent requirements, but we do bring in and approve private sales, and we have thousands of them. We've taken in and approved thousands of private sales, but it's a slow process. People get frustrated. They'll submit a sale in January and we haven't looked at it by February, and they're, sometimes they're in a rush. They want to get it in, and we're like, this is not the process. That we don't exist so that we can be this bulletin board where people can post their private sales quickly and try to sell stuff. Like, no, it's a slow process. It's designed to be a slow process. Sometimes it gets backlogged because there's a lot of people who want to submit their private sales, and sometimes people don't follow the protocols, so we have to send them back. Sometimes we can't approve the sale if they're spending a few days looking at it and talking to all the people involved and deciding that we can't do this, we can't approve this. So there's a lot involved in it. If anybody wants to pursue or look into that, just go to Google and type in Card Ladder private sales FAQ or something like that. It'll take you to the page. So we do have a mechanism for that, but Leighton, it barely scrapes the surface of all the different private sales that are happening. And it's and partially because it's in the purview of collectors and dealers and buyers and sellers to just not report that information. There's no obligation on somebody who has a private sale that you have to make it public. You don't have to do that. And we don't pressure anybody to do that. But we do have a mechanism available if they want to make it public, if they're willing to go through the rigorous process of getting it approved, and they're willing to put their name on it publicly, and they're willing to subject themselves to follow-up questions if people have them. We do have a process in place so that people can report private sales.
You did a fantastic job and a very thorough one of that, explaining it. It's interesting. So I sell stuff privately all the time. And I'm just going to use one example. I'm not going to use a gentleman's name, but I had a 33 Gaudi New Garrett PSA 5. Very well centered. It was on eBay. The gentleman has bought from me privately before, so it wasn't hard for him to reach out to me. And we reached a deal for $17,400. And as I sit here, I am absolutely willing to partake and to do that work. Now, I don't think I'd report a $400 private sale to you. I just don't think that's worth it. Meaning you're saying it's a lot of time. It's rigorous. So I don't know the exact amount, like I'd want the minimum to be for me. I think 17,400 sounds pretty good.
It does.
But this is my question. You need both me as the seller, but you also need the buyer's consent.
Correct.
And I couldn't speak for the gentleman. I certainly am happy to share it. I know he paid me because I deposited the money, and I know it cleared. But I'm not so sure that the gentleman who bought it really needs to be vindicated or heard that he paid 17.4. In fact, I might argue, and believe me, I feel like we take another hour, so I'll try to be brief. I could actually see why it's a disadvantage for him to report that. And so, like I said, we could talk for a whole bunch of other time on this. How do I get my buyers of the cards to participate so we can help the market collectively?
Yeah, that's sometimes a difficult mountain to climb, because sometimes buyers feel like they got a good deal, or they just don't want to create the impression that there's a public record of this card transacting in a level of frequency that they don't want that appearance to exist. So sometimes they're just not going to consent to it. But I have found and I have observed that most of the time, even when it sort of seems like the buyer might be a little bit apprehensive or less likely or less inclined to want to consent to the private sale being reported, they almost always consent to it. They almost always think it's cool and say, yeah, you do have my permission to post it. So in most instances, it's the old adage, it doesn't hurt to ask. The worst they can say is no. And it's good that they have the right to say no. I mean, it is a private transaction, and if they feel like it's advantageous, not report
absolutely right. I would say, I'm just throwing it out there, I don't know if you guys do this, and if you don't, I think it's a great idea, but who am I? I would love to see Card Ladder set up at the National Sports Collectors Convention and have the ability, whether it be we come up, by the hour, or there's a report given to you at the end of the day, because I couldn't think of a better place to have private sales recorded on the spot, because I have the buyer in front of me. I'm the seller, and once again, just trying to bring value to the end user. The end user, Chris, might be you one day. It might be me. It might be my son, God willing, right? Who's going to collect, over the next 50 years, 100 years. But that seems like a wonderful place to try to springboard two things. Number one, getting some legit, juicy private sale data. And don't worry about the actual number of transactions. It's about the juiciness, right? About the high-end items that are moving. But then number two, I think you're really going to bring a lot of attention and spotlight to Card Ladder being super aggressive and caring about doing the best job possible. Because, Chris, no one thinks you're getting every private sale. But if you did that, that goes a long way to maybe springboard. Maybe you go to Dallas once a year. Maybe you go to Chantilly once a year. And now all of a sudden, maybe it takes just a year or two of doing that. Now, all of a sudden, guys like me or fellow other dealers are going to be a little bit more like, it is rigorous, but it's worth it. Because if we took, how many dealers are at the National? I don't know, 1,000, 500, 1,500. If we all gave you just 10 sales, that would be such wonderful data. And I'll, raise my hand first. I'll do it. I'll volunteer to give you 10 sales. I can't tell you that my 10 buyers will say it's okay. Has there been any thought or discussion on the Card Ladder team to do this?
Well, yeah, first of all, it's an excellent idea, and it provides a great venue for the buyer and the seller, who are very excited about their transaction, to both be able to walk up to our table and just say, hey, look, we both consent to this. Here are the details of the transaction. Here's the receipt of the transaction, or so. We need some sort of verification mechanism too. Cash deals, I'm always leery. I'm not saying any dealers or buyers are doing this, but like with a cash deal, it's like, well, did they just change cash in front of me and then they just walk over here and then they undo the deal? So we want to have some sort of tangible documentation, which, by the way, that documentation never gets made public. We never release it under any circumstances would we ever, but we do need to see it. We need somebody on our team to be able to vouch for the fact that we have a tangible proof that this transaction happened. We did have this happen. We were set up at the Burbank Card Show, and there was a transaction in the low six-figure amount that involved several different cards of some really hot rookies at that time, some of their very best cards, some football quarterbacks. And they came up to us and they said, hey, we just did this deal. We did it electronically, even though we met in person. Here's the proof of the exchange of funds. Here's the person who has taken the possession and control of the card. We both want to report this sale. What all do we need to do? So we collected their information. We got their link out. We got their contact. We vetted their reputations, so on and so forth. And we were actually able to verify some really cool sales that went down to the Burbank Card Show. This was a little under 2 years ago now. We have done it. We've never gone out of our way to seek it. So we've never solicited it. We've never facilitated a way to make it easy to do, which is a novel idea. It's a very exciting idea. You know, one of the things that I think that we constantly are aiming towards is integrating as much as possible with the most active buyers and sellers in this market. They're using our product all the time. The sales history page is getting infinite views every day. We know that people are out there using it. Any way that we can enhance their experience, that's what we are here for. That's literally our purpose, is to serve the transacting parties in this industry. So if there's an appetite for it, if we can facilitate it, I think that's a very exciting idea that we can help provide, especially because some of the most important and biggest sales, they happen privately. They're not happening publicly, and some of them happen at the national.
Yeah, no, I appreciate, you kind of fielding the question and, taking your best shot at it. I certainly understand, some of the things that would make it more challenging and difficult. That being said, and we don't have to go down this rabbit hole, but I think we both know, and I'm sure folks who are watching this could also have your wheel spinning and think about this. You could still have a transaction appear to be legitimate in the electronic way, and then all of a sudden the funds are just sent back over to manipulate the market. So I guess what I'm saying is Card Ladder or any other price service will never be perfect. It's only going to be as good or as strong as the data. And I understand the hesitation and the trepidation behind doing it on such a grand scale as a national. But boy, if you could, I just think that would be super, super exciting. And who knows, maybe this will be the show that gave you the impetus to go back to Nat and the team and say, we could do something. And I do think that people would be willing to do something for you. And man, I would love to see in a couple months' time, about 75 days, something rolling out at the national.
Well, let me make this an announcement for
Sure.
Trading Card Therapy. And I'll say it right now. And my word is my bond. Anybody who would like to come up to the Card Ladder booth at the 2025 National this year and follow the protocol, please, 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 in advance, look at the Card Ladder private sale FAQ. And if you'd like to follow that protocol and report a private sale to us live at the National this year, we will be at that booth. We will be happy to take it. We will be happy to take. I can't promise that we're going to have a big banner soliciting people to do it, but if somebody wants to take the effort to walk over to the corporate section, come to our booth and report a sale, we will certainly be happy to take it.
Awesome. Well, I got a couple other things I want to cover here, and I'm really glad that you guys are going to do that. And I can tell you, Chris, firsthand, that one of the most exciting days is the first day before it's even open to the public. And I can tell you, I'm going to march my butt over to you on Wednesday morning, which will be 24 hours after the first day. And I don't know what I'll sell, but it'll be something of consequence. And it's going to be cool because on the first day, it's often a dealer to dealer. It's not even necessarily a dealer to collector. So looking forward, of course, seeing you at the National and, many other friends out there as well. I wanted to run this by you. Like I said, I've not put this out publicly yet. I plan to tomorrow. And I don't know if others have done this yet. So if they have, congratulations. I think it's a super cool idea. So I've recently begun to use Card Ladder for the vintage side of things. And then a buddy of mine who's into IT said, hey, Leighton, people are always listening to you talk about vintage. And, what if we could utilize Card Ladder to talk about things that transpired over the last 3 months and provide some insight to them? So, for example, I have the list in front of me, and I guess I'll just pull it up here. I don't know if I could do this or not. Oh, I can. Very cool. So it's, the first draft. What I've done is I've gone to the pre-war era, and I've gone to what I would call the Topps era, and I've looked at only cards that were on the game, right, that have gone up. And I'm going to start with the pre-war cards, Chris, and I'll tell you what happened there. For example, a T206 Mathewson portrait in low-grade PSA 2 went up 54%. And when I started to go through the pre-war cards, I'm like, oh, it's very obvious to me that these cards have better eye appeal than most of the other cards for that grade. And this is why this is important and very key, gang. This might be the first place that we can start to figure out the type of premium, Chris, that people are paying for better eye appeal cards of the same grade. And that is why I'm super excited to say that I'm going to drop some sort of vintage report. I don't know if it'll be today, Chris. It'll probably be tomorrow on social. So does that mean IG, Facebook, YouTube, something like that, right? And then on the modern side, because I'll be honest, I do buy 80s rookies and nines. I think that they're highly undervalued. This is not to try to get you to buy them, gang. And if you look, did someone buy that PSA 9 Boggs for a 90% increase over the last one because they thought it would 10? Or was it just a really nice example for the grade? And I can tell you firsthand, you're not bumping a Wade Boggs 83 Topps rookie in a 9 very easily to a 10. So once again, that Boggs rookie in a 9, it's like a very affordable-ish card. It's like $100-ish. It's not crazy, Chris, that someone spent $191 on a beautiful example of a PSA 9. And so what I'm trying to say, you could see the theme. I think there's some beautiful data here to share with the collecting public. It's not to say that Ted Williams 55 Topps is hot. That's not what I'm saying with this. But what I am saying, for the first time, no one really knows at auction, Chris, that when you see a card, let's say it's $500 in that base grade of 3. If I really like that example in a 3, do I pay $550? Do I pay $800? Do I pay $1,000? And I believe that some of the insights with the data of the past sales history from Card Ladder, I'm going to try to produce. I don't know if it's going to be weekly or twice a month, but I'm going to come out with something, and I'm going to ask folks basically to comment. Hey, what do we think of this list? What do you think's going on with that particular card or these cards? Is it because they're hot? Is it because of eye appeal? Or is it because of a third reason I've never thought of? That's what I got, Chris. What do you think?
I love it. This type of content is what lit the fire for me to start making my first podcast, the House of Jordans podcast, in 2018. Literally half of the podcast was me holding a piece of paper, just like you were right there, of the sales that I'd compiled and measuring which cards had seen an improvement and which ones didn't. And then we would slow down and we would break it down and we would say, well, this high voltage 500 Michael Jordan card, it doubled in the last month. Is that sustainable, or was there something particularly nice about this copy? So on and so forth. And then, I just love it. I think, however, that it was much easier to do it in the Michael Jordan insert realm, because in that realm, there's more consistency grade to grade. I think one of the most exciting trends that I've seen develop in vintage and pre-war collecting in particular, but I think it's also spread to the other eras as well. But the driving force is those genres, is the slowing down and the careful appreciation for the eye appeal and all the different characteristics that the card presents to the particular viewer above and beyond the grade, which is not to say the grade doesn't matter. I think sometimes we can go a little too far and mischaracterize what a grade is. A grade is an opinion that has been given by an expert on the topic, and in particular cases, it's verified by a second opinion giver. It's also, in the case of certain grading companies, it's a grade that's been guaranteed by the grading company. It's also something that's been encapsulated and protected, and so on and so forth. But the development, the creative expression as a collector that I see flourishing, of saying, well, look, this is actually why I waited a year before I bought a copy of this card, because this particular copy spoke to me for these particular reasons. I just think that's one of the most exciting developments in content. And I think that you bringing together an empirical data side with the opinion of a savvy collector, the opinion of a savvy dealer who's able to explain decision-making processes, auction strategy, evaluating cards beyond the grade, beyond the slab. I just think that's a recipe for incredible content.
Well, I thought so too, Chris. Meaning, not only do I find it interesting, but we all face this problem as respective collectors. Meaning, even if we're a dealer, we're still a collector. And so I can tell you firsthand from being at the Strongsville show, which is probably the best vintage show in the country, people are a little lost right now. So in other words, they see that Mathewson portrait and they actually know it's nicer than the average 2 or 3. Where they're lost, Chris, is they don't know what to pay. Now, there's no right or wrong, but wouldn't that be so cool if you found a piece of empirical data that said, you're not alone in this Mathewson pursuit. Someone in the last year has also paid 60% more than an average PSA 2. And I think that knowledge is power. And that's what I want to do. I want to help the vintage collectors going to the National. And that's why I want to ramp it up now. I want folks going to the National to understand, and to be clear, there's nothing wrong with buying an average PSA 2 or an average PSA 4. But if you're someone who fancies, let's say, a certain copy, certain characteristics, certain centering, not only will you maybe have to pay more, but now you might have a little bit of a crutch that I'll be candid, Chris. I wish that crutch was available when I was going after the Jordan photo. That's what made that Jordan photo so difficult. At the same time, I was so proud to win it because I didn't have that. And I want to provide that in conjunction with Card Ladder. I want to provide that data and that content analysis on a weekly or a couple times a month basis to really aid their pursuit of whether it be their respective grail or just the next cool card that they're going to add to their collection.
Well, I didn't foresee this being sort of I have no idea what we were going to talk about today.
I know.
I think this has a million thoughts running through my head. This is a great illustration, and this is not false modesty. This is just an honest appraisal of the Card Ladder product and its limitations. This is a great illustration of what Card Ladder can do and what it can't. What it can do is provide you with lots of different price modeling tools and really cool collection management and this great sales history feature that can locate all these different data points for you. What it can't do, this is kind of like similar to sort of like the problem that AI products sort of are having right now too. What it can't do is it can't replace the judgment of the collector. It can't replace the analysis of the seasoned dealer who is able to take data and interpret it. Card Ladder can provide you the data. It can give you a lot of tools to help you interpret the data, but it can't interpret it for you. Interpretation is an act of the human mind. It's an act of a creative mind, and it's also a skill, and it's an art, and it's something that people can learn. So I can learn it from you. When you produce content of this nature, or Jeremy has been one of the people who I love watching his auction recaps because I love watching him blow up a scan and just zoom in on things. Say, look, the registration on this is like 80% as good as the one that I saw last auction. And I'll go find that other sale and I'll say, let me see what he's saying here. Let me try to understand what he's teaching the audience. That's the art of interpretation. That's taking the data, but transcending the data and interpreting it, analyzing it, using it into a grand strategic process of building a collection. So when I hear you sort of taking, Card Ladder is just it provides the data point, but it can't interpret it for you. It can't analyze it for you. It can't collect for you. The collector has to do that part. So when I hear people doing that, that's the ultimate use case for what we built, is exactly what you just said.
Well, I'm super excited about it. It sounds like you and maybe some of the community might be excited about it as well. I have just a couple other things I wanted to talk about. Before I do, I did want to give a shout out to our friend Jeremy. Make sure you check out his show on Saturday nights. It really is the hobby hangout, the place to be. It starts at 10 o'clock. It's called Sports Cards Live. You can find him on youtube.com. And if I'm not mistaken, Chris, you've kind of become like the unofficial closer of the show. Yeah. And if I could stay up and I wasn't such an old man, right, I would stay up for it. But what I have done recently is I've listened to a few of your segments because I can't stay up that late. And then furthermore, I want to give a shout out to his auction recaps. I'll tell you, it's actually been where I've been learning about modern, because it's not that, you can go to eBay or you can go to Card Ladder and you can, as you said, take the data and just look at it, but no one's talking to me. Now he has Josh from 90s Auction on. I'm like, oh, and I don't even have to watch. Now, don't get me wrong, the scans are cool, but I'll be doing other card work. And I'm like, wait, what the heck is that Shaq insert? And then I will go look because I had never heard of it. So really kudos to you. And of course, everyone else on Saturday nights. It's a lot of fun. Jeremy puts on a great show. I have two more questions for you. The first one, and of course, you have embraced technology. Obviously, look at Card Ladder. But if you had one wish and you could utilize technology to do something else in the hobby today, what would that wish be, and how would you use that technology to get it done?
Okay, well, that's a great question. I also want to just turn the compliment back to you very briefly, not to make it awkward, but I remember meeting you for the first time at Bleecker Trading in 2021, and I met you again at the Mint Collective several times. I just have seen you at shows and stuff ever since. You've always had such an intellectual curiosity. I don't know if you remember these interactions or not, but
I do.
Every time, you have this just unending interest in learning about all the different categories of the hobby. Even if it's something that's not what you're actively pursuing or collecting, you're like, man, why are Luka Doncic cards this much? And you'll just follow that line of inquiry for an hour if you could. And the intellectual curiosity is one of the great gifts that we have as human beings. And just I love to see people exercise that muscle. So it's always a pleasure to discuss those things with you. But okay, first of all, I'm going to guard my answer to this question, because if I do have a great idea, it might be a product one day.
Fair.
So I can't totally tip my hand on that. But one thing that I would really love if we could improve upon in general, that relates to a product like Card Ladder and to the market in general, is just continuing to increase our ability to detect sham transactions. That was literally the impetus behind Card Ladder. One of them anyway was somebody should be looking at these sales for important cards and giving an opinion on it. It's not going to be perfect, not always going to be right, but somebody should be building a data set that's vetted. And now by this point in time, I think we've vetted somewhere around 8 million, 9 million sales. It's just insane to think about all those nights of looking at thousands and thousands of sales and just building this crazy vetted database. But we did. But if there was a way to make that more efficient through transparency on marketplaces, this is something we encourage marketplaces to do, is we need to know when items get paid and when they don't. And some marketplaces do a great job of it. Some of the auction houses, I'll give an example, is Fanatics, the Fanatics Premier and the Fanatics Weekly. They have a clear policy of removing unpaid items after the payment window closes, and we rely on that. Another platform that does a great job of this is Alt. In fact, the relationship we have with Alt and the relationship we have with several other marketplaces is that they don't even feed us sales unless they first verify that it's been paid. So then we don't really need, we still go through the vetting process there, because just because an item is paid doesn't mean necessarily that it's an arm's length transaction. So we still have to look at it. But the more things that we can do, and I don't know what the tech solution to this is, to be quite honest with you, I don't know, but the more we can do to increase confidence in transactions. Sham transactions are a small percentage. They are a small percentage of what happens in the market, but they do happen, and I see them happen every day. It's literally my job every night. I work odd hours. We wait for all the day's sales to come in, and then Christina and I sit in this very office from about 11 a.m. until around 2 or 3, or 11 p.m. until around 2 or 3 a.m. when we're reviewing sales. We see it happen. So if there was a way to just continue to increase the transparency surrounding transactions, that would be my tech wish. How to do it, I don't know. Sorry, I don't know.
That's okay. It was a great answer, Chris, and I hope that we get there as well. I wanted to ask one more question, but I want to try to be succinct, because candidly, I think this might be our longest episode of Trading Card Therapy ever, and I want to make sure that people don't, decide to not come back, if you will, Chris. I think it was a great episode, though. So in a nutshell, and this is something I would ask you if we were standing at the craps table at the Mint Inc. or having a beer, after a convention, but succinctly, can we try to give some advice to someone like me and others who've collected cards, but they're overwhelmed by the modern space, Chris, and they want to buy themselves either a special Michael Jordan card or a special Luka card or a special Mahomes card? And I know I'm asking a very broad question, but what I'm referring to is there's just an inordinate amount of numbered cards, and now there's kabooms which aren't numbered. So how does someone make fiscal sense of how to approach, let's say, the modern collecting of some of these better players?
Yeah, well, I think one of the trickiest parts about this is that the cards that expose us to the least amount of risk, and the root of the risk is because there's so much speculating going on, and there's so much hoping that, I'll buy this Mahomes Prism Silver PSA 10 for 4,500. I really hope that he'll beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl, and then it will be 6,000, and I'll be able to sell it really quickly. And that, there's a lot of that. There's the active nature of players who are adding to their legacy game by game, week by week, championship by championship, MVP by MVP. There's so much energy bound up in that so many people are speculating on and hoping to take advantage of, that it makes for, quite frankly, what looks to most of us like inflated prices. It just does. And I don't think that that's an unfair observation. I think that that's an observation that once you disentangle the causes, disentangle what leads to the speculative nature of these cards, suddenly it's just an observation. It's just like, yeah, I mean, this takes nothing away from the card. It doesn't make the card any more or any less collectible in a vacuum. But in terms of where it stands as an item in a market, it makes it hard to think that when all the speculation is gone, when all of the quote unquote day trading is gone, that this card is going to be treated and actively pursued in the same way by the same people. It just makes it hard to believe that's going to be the case. But I do think that for somebody who wants to own the card for a long time, who doesn't want to play the game of, hey, maybe, Mahomes wins a Super Bowl and this card will go up in value really quickly, somebody who wants to just sidestep that and collect more passively and more on the side and just, I want to build a collection for the long haul, which is how I personally collect. I can share one way that I'm approaching this for a different player in my collection who happens to be his market is almost entirely dominated by speculative people right now and very few collectors. That's a quarterback that I've taken a liking to, which is Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy has virtually no accolades to his name. He's made a Pro Bowl or two. He went to the Super Bowl. He has some great stats. That's why I'm really excited about him. But this guy, if his career ended today, he's not even an asterisk in the history of the NFL. So how do I avoid getting into his Prism Silver card, which, it could lose half of its value if he has one bad season? How do I avoid exposing myself to that risk? Well, here's the double-edged sword of the complexity of the ultramodern offering. First of all, it's very overwhelming. You have 25, 30 different products. I actually once did a research project where I looked at all of Brock Purdy's different base set cards that under, Victor Roman's methodology or other methodologies could be considered a true rookie card. I identified them. Then I identified what the rarest parallel of each of them was. And then I said, I'm going to focus on the lesser known ones that are going to be cheap. They're not going to be on the radar of people who are speculating nearly as much. And then I'm going to get to learn about really cool products that I'd never thought of or heard of before. And I'm going to take the opportunity to avoid exposing myself to the market fluctuations that something like his Prism Silver would be much more subject to experience. So I'm going to lose some of the short-term upside potential as well that might exist, but I'm also shielding myself, I hope, from a lot of the downside. And so for my Purdy collection, some of the cards that I've added to it over the past 6 months or so, his 2022 is a product from Panini called Rookies and Stars. He has a base set card in the Rookies and Stars product. That card has one of one. It came up for sale. I knew to look for it because I'd already done the research to know what all of his true rookie cards are. And I know that that's the only one of one parallel to that true rookie card of his from the base set. I bought it and I got it for way cheaper than his Prism Silver. Wait, it's a way better card. And
that's
it's a
crazy. That's crazy. Good for you.
That's my approach.
Chris, I appreciate you laying it out the way that you did, because I know that if I can understand it, I don't think I'm that smart. I think that a lot of folks out there can also understand it. And I think it just goes to show you, Chris, you're not doing this stuff by accident. It's like with the Jordan photo. I didn't just randomly find it and start bidding away. I had 20 years of experience that gave me the strategy and the impetus behind me going after it and securing it. And really, I'd never thought about the modern market the way you just said. But if you're a true collector, yeah, we'll use someone more popular like a Luka. Luka's got plenty of other great cards in the non-main, like Obsidian. Obsidian's not a main brand. Oh my God, some of his 18 Obsidian cards are beautiful. Yeah. Now they cost real money because Luka stuff goes for big money. But I've even found, and like I said, we could probably stay for 2 hours more, and I'm not going to do that to you. But like even on Kobe, okay, I've just decided for myself, I grew up an upper deck guy. I don't love Kobe Panini stuff. So already that allowed me to kind of get rid of a lot of stuff. And then when it comes to the upper deck stuff, there's so much of it that's not affordable. So what I decided to do just purely as a collector. I don't sell Kobe cards. I collect early jersey Kobe Bryant game used Upper Deck cards. And because I'm very good at grading, I actually buy them raw when I think they're clean enough, and I get them graded. And, they grade 7, 8, 9. I don't think I've ever got a 10. But if you look at what I'm paying for those versus what they cost already slabbed, I'm definitely saving money, and I'm having a lot of fun doing it. And I'm not getting caught up in the game used dual sign with LeBron or MJ. And those are great, but I don't have 17,000 or 29,000 to take a shot, right? These are cards I'm acquiring in the hundreds of dollars range. And in some cases, I know they're worth more because I see the slabbed examples sell. And so per what you were suggesting, whether it be it's the Brock Purdy research or someone like Kobe, who's of course even more widely known, there's pockets of affordability if you don't get caught up trying to compete with the Joneses of the hobby.
That's an amazing way to sum it up.
So with that, Chris, I am going to allow you to go back to your normal life. Thanks for laughing. So before I do, could you please let everyone in the community know, how do they find you? Not just to ask a question about Card Ladder, but I know you're very approachable. So is Christina and so is Josh. What if they have a question about MJ or a particular card or a subset of cards in MJ? How do folks reach out to you and find you?
Yeah, I love to talk about collecting more than anything. So I'm happy to field a Card Ladder question, happy to field any question. But yeah, I mean, if somebody says hey, can we talk about Brock Purdy's rookie cards or something like that? You're really going to make my day. Okay. So Instagram would be the best way. My handle on Instagram is Chris_HOJ. I'm also on Twitter. I think my @ is House of Jordans from back in my podcasting days when we had that podcast. One of those two ways, or just, you can just go to the Card Ladder site. There's ways to reach us from the Card Ladder site too. But, and at a show, we go to a lot of shows, not as many as you, but we go to a lot of shows. So if you see us there, you'd make my day if you wanted to walk up and talk about cards or whatever.
Very cool. And the last thing I was going to close with, and I wasn't planning this, but I really have had such a great time. And I think that your tool needs to end up in more people's hands. So Chris, we'll correspond afterwards. I'm going to choose a winner, but the way, folks, that you can enter, and I'm going to tell you what we're going to put up. I don't even know what it costs, so hopefully I'll get a fair deal. But what I'd like to do is I'm going to choose one lucky person who is going to be watching this show. We're going to drop it probably tomorrow or Saturday. We're going to give you a week. If you drop a comment into our YouTube chat, just say, hi, what do you collect, where you're from, you'll be automatically entered. And we're going to choose one of you to give you a full year on the house. I'm going to pay for it personally from Just Collect. And we're going to give you a full year of cardladder.com access. And I'd love to hear all about your journey. If you decide, if you win it and you decide to use it, we'd love to hear all about it. But Chris, we'll work out the details afterwards so I can give it away and, work that all out. But I think that would be super cool. I think that's just one small way that I can help more people learn about Card Ladder and get the word out there.
That's incredibly generous.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you in a couple months at the National.
See you soon, man.
Take it easy, bud. All right, gang. So that was Chris from Card Ladder, House of Jordans, and many other, basketball and modern interests that Chris has. You can, of course, reach out to him on cardladder.com and on IG. If you enjoyed today's episode of Trading Card Therapy, it would mean the world to me if you hit the like button, if you subscribe to our Just Collect YouTube channel. That way you'll be notified each and every time we drop a new piece of card content, whether it be Trading Card Therapy or a story behind a collection that we just purchased, like we did down in Atlanta when I was there for the Topps Industry Conference. Stay tuned for that video to drop in the next few days here on our Just Collect YouTube channel. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you real soon.